The Chevy Equinox gets a new generation for the 2025 model year, and in this video I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive, see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the fuel economy you can expect and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as the 2025 Equinox here, well, I'm standing next to the new Activ trim, which is a first-time offer here for the Equinox, and it gives you a properly more rugged look. In addition to just all 2025 Equinoxes getting a more rugged look, you have a taller hood here. It's 2.5 inches wider than the prior generation. You also have a slight stretch in the wheelbase and in the length of the vehicle, just ever so slightly, but it's essentially the same size as the old one. And it's just, you know, impressive, the extra width. You also have a wider track, so a little bit better and more stable handling. But as far as this Activ trim, the big thing here is the more rugged look, the more outdoorsy kind of appearance for this one. And I also love this cacti green color that comes in. But the Activ, the exclusive things for this you see are the front bumper and the grille are unique. And it looks like it has a slightly better approach angle than what you get on a regular version of the Equinox. But the big news here as far as the actual improvement is these all-terrain tires you have. They are real all-terrain tires. You can see they're very knobby. And we'll talk about how that affects the driving experience out on the road. But, you know, it's going to give you extra capability and gives you a really cool look on these 17-inch wheels. But of course, there is still the RS version of the Equinox, which is very popular still. That has returned for 2025, gives you some 19 or even 20-inch wheels optionally on that. And it's great that you still have the sportier look with that one. That one also has a wider grille if you are someone who wants the sportier look. And I also love the usage of two-tone here. You will see this Activ trim has an option for a white roof. You can get the white roof with any color. You can also not have a white roof, but it's only white for the two-tone thing for the Actives. Now, if you go for the RS version, you have the option for a black roof, but it's only black for the RS, only white here for the Activ. Otherwise, though, coming down to the sides of all these Equinoxes, it's a really cool side profile. They have that shark fin thing they brought over from the Traverse, and it's a really cool design element to really give this some visual appeal on the side shot here. And I like how it kind of meets up with that glass and kind of gives you a floating roof kind of appearance there as it goes into the rear glass. And then going out to the back there, you also have you know, some new taillights, and of course the entire back end is completely restyled, and it's a sharp look. It really does look like a mini Traverse in many ways, but I mean, just so much more trucky than the prior generation Equinox, and really follows this trend that we're seeing of everyone wanting a more rugged looking SUV. Especially, like you can see also the wheel arches here, how they're kind of squared off, and just, yeah, from every angle I think it's a really nice improvement. I really like the fact that we now have the headlights a little bit lower there for some better nighttime visibility for oncoming traffic, but you still have the really cool LED DRL there up top. And by the way, all these LEDs are standard for base ones, standard for you know, these top ones. It's really great you have the same lighting elements. And as far as the trim structure, that is also the last thing I'll mention that's been simplified. In addition to this Activ trim and the RS, you just have an LT trim. Now there's a couple option packages for each of them, but it's pretty simplified with the way they're offering these, and it's really nice that they do offer it that way. And you know, it also is pretty even as far as pricing goes, with both this and the RS being priced at the same point. And so it's just take your pick. You either want the rugged thing or you want the sporty thing, or you can go for that base LT, which starts just under $30,000. We'll talk more about pricing later, but overall I think the styling here for the 25 Equinox is a really nice improvement. And yeah, I think it's going to really stand out compared to the prior gen. The interior of the 2025 Equinox gets a big tech upgrade, a nice materials upgrade, and you know, just brings us into line with all the other new Chevy products, with the very fun like red air vents you have here on the RS version, and the cool materials and all that. But the screens are, you know, the one thing that's really going to stand out, especially with an 11-inch digital gauge cluster. You have an 11.3-inch infotainment screen. I'll get into more of those in a minute. But the first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these really nice EvoTech seats, which is what Chevy calls their synthetic leather, and it does feel very premium, really nice. You also have a little bit of like a suede clothy kind of material here on the bolsters a little bit as well. But the red and blue stitching and all that, it's really fun here, especially on the RS. If you go for the Activ trim, you're going to have what they call a maple sugar color, and it has its own unique look there. And then of course you can even go down to cloth seats still if you'd like in the LTs. But as far as these seats here, so they come standard in the RS and the Activ with heating. You can get cooling as an option if you go for an option package on these. And the cooled seats work pretty nice. I was just trying them out here a few minutes ago, and it's great you have the perforations here. It's a really cool perforation pattern as well. You also have the RS, you know, there on the headrest. But really soft, comfortable seats too. I actually really like the support here. You also have adjustable cool lumbar support, which is great. Really well done seats. The steering wheel here in the new Equinox is the new Chevy wheel, and it's a little bit of a thicker wheel, especially this RS version has a flat bottom to it, a little bit of a sportier feel, but it's a handful, this wheel. It's definitely thicker. You know, some people with smaller hands might not love it, but for me, it's mostly okay, and it has a good 9-3 grip otherwise. And you have just a few buttons here on the wheel, nice and simple. It's not cluttered with buttons like some other competitors have on their steering wheels. Just nice and simple. You also see it's a heated steering wheel. You get a heated steering wheel as standard here on RS and on Activ trims, and it's something you can option, I believe, on LT as well. But a really nice wheel. And you also will see in this area you have a steering column mounted shifter for the first time here in Equinox, and that frees up the center area to give you more storage, which we'll talk about in a second. But love having the steering column mounted shifter, and I think it actually makes a lot of sense, and it's great to see that becoming popular again. But moving on to these gauges here, again, 11-inch digital gauge cluster here as standard on all Equinoxes, and it's a really nice high-resolution display. It has a few different views as far as whether you want to have the maps dominate the whole thing, or just have you know, your gauges, or even a simplified appearance there, or you know, all your safety info, whatever you want, it's all on there. And you can also customize those tiles to have different things show up if you'd like. And you know, just a really nicely done gauge cluster. You also have this 11.3-inch touchscreen, which does have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, thankfully, and it's running the Google built-in software. So it has Google Assistant. It also has Amazon Alexa built into it, so all your voice command stuff there you can do if you're plugged into all that. It also has the Google Play Store, so if you do have some apps there you want to download, you can have them running natively here on this infotainment system if you don't want to go through the smartphone integration. And then you also have, you know, just nice and easy tuning for your radio stations. You have, again, Google Maps built in, so that's going to be really nice and quick, especially if you have it signed into your Google account. It'll, you know, have all of your history and all that in there, so you can go through and send directions to the car, things like that. And yeah, it's great you have all that integration. The screen is also where you'll see your headlight controls. This is one of the GM vehicles to put the headlight controls in the screen here, so most people will just leave it on that auto setting anyway, but you're gonna have to dive down a little bit there if you do want to turn your headlights on for, you know, some other reason, like going through a construction zone where you need to have your headlights on. You know, that's going to require going into the screen. There is no switch anymore, so a little bit unfortunate. That's one of the more controversial things here with these newer Chevys, that they made that switch there. And but otherwise, the screen works really nice. The last thing I will add about this screen, though, is that you know, 11.3 inches is bigger than most of the competitors these days, but it isn't the biggest. I mean, I just reviewed a Ford Escape, which has the 12-inch screens, and there's some others out there that do slightly larger screens. And it's also notable, you know, now that we have Equinox EV in the picture, this has, you know, the smaller screen compared to that. That has, I think, like a 17 or 18-inch screen. It's a lot bigger. Doesn't have the smartphone integration, though, with the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but just kind of surprising when you see the smaller screens here. It would have been really cool to see them put that same screen from the Equinox in here, just to really one-up all the competition out there and make a statement. It's also impressive that this screen is standard, so even a base Equinox is going to get this nice big screen, and that is something that, again, a lot of competitors don't give you a huge screen as standard. So, you know, especially if you're going for that base version of the Equinox, a ton of value here with these big screens all being standard. Coming down, it is great. You still have all these hard buttons for your climate controls. That's something that, for example, with that Ford Escape, they got rid of all that stuff and it's all on the screen. Thankfully, you still have all these physical buttons and nice little knobs there to change the climate. Nice and easy to control all that stuff, and that is certainly appreciated. I'm really happy that they've retained those. Now, as far as storage space goes here, you see right up top here, you have this nice large bin. It's got a rubberized bottom to it, and you also see a USB-C and USB-A jacks in there. And then you'll see a wireless phone charger here, which is available. That's not standard, but that is something that is available, and it's nice that it's kind of got an aggressive angle to it here, so it should hopefully hold your phone in a little bit better than the average flat wireless charging pad in some of the competing vehicles, where they'll slide all over the place when you're driving. Then you also have two cup holders, another little bonus space right next to your drive mode selector here, which is also new, that's a big chunky knob that used to just be a little button. You also have the center armrest, which has a little bit of padding to it, but it's a little firm. I'd like to see that be a little more plush, honestly. But anyway, you open that up and you'll see a little removable tray up top and a very deep cubby. I mean, you can fit a ton of stuff in there, really a lot of space, so that's really cool. You also have another little bonus space. Now that we don't have the shifter in the middle here, you now have a space underneath everything, and it's a really long space, and at least with my arms I can access the whole thing, so it's actually accessible, usable, and nice to have that extra little bonus space there. You also have pretty large pockets in the doors with a decent sized bottle holder there as well, and so I think they did a really good job here as far as all the storage here up front. Moving on to the back seat here though in the Equinox, it's a really nice and spacious back seat. Again, legroom is basically the same as the last generation because this is still sharing the same platform as the last generation, so you know, a lot of the hard points have remained the same. Now, because this vehicle is slightly higher than the previous generation, you do get a little under an inch more headroom for the rear seat occupants only. Front seat occupants is the same, and you also have some extra hip and shoulder space thanks to the extra width of this vehicle compared to that prior generation as well. But that's really the only space gains, but it's still really nice. Back seat is really soft and comfortable. I really love that about it. And me being 5'9", sitting behind myself, I still have several inches of legroom, of course, very competitive with most of the others in this segment. You also will see when you look forward, they have an option for heated outboard rear seats. This one has that option on it. That's something that comes with the cooled seats up front here as an option package here on the RS and on the Activ trims. But you'll also see they have the dedicated air vents. They also have 2 more USB-C jacks there, and there's also a fold-down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into there and little pockets in those doors as well. And I gotta say too, this sunroof, now that we've mentioned it, I mean, it is a really nice large panoramic roof, bigger than some of the other competitors for sure, and a really nice big moonroof there. But moving on to the cargo space here, that is also from a numbers standpoint pretty much the same measurements wise compared to the last generation. So if you're familiar with the old gen Equinox, this is not going to give you any extra space really, but it's a nice wide long space. Beneath the floor there, you do have that extra large cubby there. You can fit a big duffel bag or something like that in there, so a nice bonus space for sure there. You also will see beneath that there's also a spare tire still present, which is also very much appreciated, and it's overall really good amount of cargo space. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Equinox here has the usual Chevy key, although this one being the RS, I think that's how you get the black bow tie badge there on the key. But just a basic key here still. They've used for several years now, and just a few buttons there on it. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the Equinox. So I am just starting off here in the RS version. I only have a few minutes to drive this one. I will be driving the Activ a lot more here later in this video. But as far as the RS, I just want to sample it. This one has these 19-inch wheels. You can't even get 20s on these here later this fall. But right now, just having the 19s is, a nice sporty look. You can even get 19s though on the LT version as well. But as far as the RS here, of course, you have the sportier look. And as far as the driving dynamics goes, it's all going to be the same, aside from, again, minor little tuning differences for the wheels and tires. But it's a really nice cruiser. I'm really impressed with the Equinox so far, just because it has a nice responsive throttle. You're having this turbocharged engine, which gives you a lot of torque down low, and that's something that a lot of competitors still don't give you, turbocharged engines. And so this really feels punchy off the line. And as I'm using the brakes here to slow down, really nice responsive brakes as well. They bite right towards the top of the pedal, but they're still easy to be smooth with, so it's a really nicely set up brake pedal. Steering also is a nice feeling wheel. It's not a ton of feedback, and it's not overly heavy either, like some other competitors also like to do these days. It's light enough that I think it's appropriate for something like this, just for the average, commuter kind of vehicle. And just the bottom line is, I think they've set this up to feel exactly the way you want something like this to feel, honestly. You also have great visibility, nice view forward, view out of the sides is pretty good, although you still have this little bit of a chunky base of the A-pillar here. But outside of that, it's totally good. And view out of the back is great, especially in this one, because you have the option for a camera rear view mirror in these. And so this one has that. And so that means that no matter what's sitting in the back seat or what's in the cargo area, you always have a really good view out of the back there. And so a really nice thing they offer, and again, something that many of the other competitors don't offer. The ride's also pretty nice and comfortable here in the Equinox. Driving over some potholes and rough roads and all that, it's really great. Even here in the RS, I'm sure it's even better, again, if you go for one of those LTs with the thicker sidewall on the tires, or if you go for one of the Activs, of course, with those all-terrain tires. But I'm going to try out the acceleration here briefly and just see how it accelerates. And here we go. So nice, good bit of acceleration here. We have a 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine in all Equinoxes. They do 175 horsepower and then 203 pound-feet of torque here in the all-wheel drive versions like this one is. If you go for front-wheel drive, you'll have 184 pound-feet of torque instead. And that's a little less horsepower than what you're going to get with most of the competitors, but also a little more torque than you get with most of the other competitors. So just a little bit of a trade-off there, but you know, it's a good amount of power here. Now, as far as the transmission that it runs, you have two different transmissions. If you go for a front-wheel drive, then you have a CVT transmission, which has been revised, they say, to now do some simulated shifting. But this one here, being an all-wheel drive one, means you have an 8-speed automatic, and that's what you get in all the all-wheel drive versions. And the 8-speed auto is a nice upgrade over the old 6-speed automatic you had in the prior gen of the Equinox here. And so, you know, we will do a little bit more driving here. The one other thing that I've noticed, the more that I've been going around corners, doing a little bit of steering here, is that I don't love the steering feel in this. It's a little dead on center, and it also just feels a little rubbery. It doesn't feel quite as good as most of the other competitors. And while we do have a drive mode selector here now, it only goes from a normal mode to a snow mode and then an off-road mode if you have all-wheel drive. But there is no sport mode to give you any sportier steering or anything like that. Again, for most people, it'll probably be totally fine, but you know, just doesn't give you quite as much feedback as some of the others out there. But yeah, you know, just cruising in suburban traffic here, you know, it's nice and quiet. It's a nice, pretty smooth ride, and overall just a really nice thing to cruise around in here for the RS. But I'm going to hop in the Activ trim and see what the more adventurous Equinox feels like. All right, so now we're in the Activ trim of the Equinox, and the big question, you know, is how these tires change the ride, because obviously we have these 17-inch wheels on these all-terrain tires. They're General Grabber all-terrain tires, and it's a legit off-road tire here. We're not talking about some fancy sidewall on a regular all-season like some others do these days. And this, you know, what I'm impressed by, first off, the ride is very smooth. So from a smoothness standpoint, to me, it feels basically the same as a regular all-season you get on any other version of the Equinox here. I am noticing more road noise, though. You can certainly hear the tire noise. Obviously, some of the roads here are a little rougher than others, so you know your mileage is going to vary depending on the kind of roads you have around you. But you know, it does seem like there is more road noise here than there was yesterday when I was driving the RS. Is it terrible? No. And then, you know, if you're having a conversation, you barely even notice it. You have the radio going, things like that. You know, it's not going to be super in your face, but just know that that is going to be a little bit of a compromise. This tire, by the way, isn't just an off-the-shelf version. Chevy did develop this tire specifically for this vehicle in cooperation with General, and so you know, it is custom tailored for this vehicle, but it still is just the nature of these tires. They're going to be a little noisier. Just, you got to know that about this. Otherwise, though, I mean, it handles really great out here on the road, so we don't have any super aggressive corner or anything, but this isn't a sports car, so I'm not going to review it like one. But you know, you do have the wider track here. It's an 1.5 inch wider track. They also went up a little wider on the tires. They went from 225s in the prior gen Equinox to 235s here, and these, so a little bit extra grip. So you're going to have, you know, more stable handling, more planted ride than before. And also at higher speeds here, the steering has gotten a little weightier and a little bit more engaging to me, because I was complaining, you know, in the RS how it felt a little rubbery and a little vague at lower speeds, but up at some higher speeds here, it does feel a little bit better in my mind. And I mean, yeah, ride is still super nice and smooth, and this one obviously is also still the 8-speed automatic and the all-wheel drive, although surprisingly you can get the Activ even with these off-road tires and everything with front-wheel drive. So if you're someone who just wants the look, and you know, you just like having the tires, but you don't need all 4 wheels driven, you can get the Activ with front-wheel drive, surprisingly, which is something all the other competitors basically with their rugged trims are going to force you into all-wheel drive. So one little unique thing here, if you live in a place where you don't get too much bad weather, you know, this might be a nice little savings here going for a front-wheel drive Equinox. But yeah, otherwise it's just a great cruiser, and this motor continues to be nice and responsive, nice and punchy around town. And then out here on the open road, you know, it's still plenty of power. Again, I would like to see a little bit more horsepower to, again, be a little more competitive with the other crossovers out there, but this is only down, you know, a few horsepower compared to most of the others, so it's not a big deal. And again, something that, you know, the average buyer of this is not going to care about. And the motor is also quiet, it's smooth. But just for kicks, we do have a roundabout here. We can just try out a little bit of handling here, see how the body roll is. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's definitely a little more leany. I'd say compared to like a CR-V, RAV4, especially CX-5 from Mazda, this is less sporty in its setup, especially this one again with these tires is going to, give you a little bit of a downgrade as well. But even, I had a Kia Sportage X Pro last year that, had also their version of, an all-terrain kind of tire on it. And even that to me felt a little more eager to turn than this does. So again, just know that it's not going to be maybe quite as sporty as some of the others out there if that's something that matters to you, but for everyone else, it's still going to be totally fine. One other really great improvement here with the 2025 Equinox is that they gave you a lot more standard safety equipment than before. Previously, Chevy would kind of nickel and dime you for some of the extra safety features, and some of the top stuff is still an extra cost option. So some of the things you wouldn't expect to get as standard these days, like a 360 camera, is still an extra cost option. This digital camera rearview mirror is all part of a package. It's about $1,000 extra for the 360 camera, that along with some fog lights, I believe. So those are the only things though that are like extra cost things. Otherwise, everything is standard. Adaptive cruise control is standard, blind spot monitoring is standard, rear cross traffic alert is standard, rear automatic braking, intersection braking, all those things, the most advanced safety stuff you see from any of the competitors these days is all standard here. And that is great because a lot of other competitors do also make a lot of those things standard, but there are still some that make you pay extra for adaptive cruise control and charge you extra for some of these more high-end features, and this gives you all that stuff as standard, which is really, really great. My only complaint, and this isn't really a safety thing, it's more so a just a convenience feature, as Chevy calls it, but there is no option for Super Cruise here. I would like to see an option for Super Cruise at some point, but as it is right now, they just said that that's kind of what the Equinox EV is for. It's for that more high-tech focused buyer that wants the electric experience, and they think that those people are going to want that Super Cruise feature more so than a regular Equinox. But I think there's a lot of people who would love to have their regular gas Equinox also be able to just drive itself on the highway. So we will see if they add that down the road, but for now, unfortunately, no Super Cruise here. And also, we're on a little bit of a dirt road here. Again, this is no intense off-road. You have no extra ground clearance here really, aside from just the slight bump you get from the tires. But just a little road just to illustrate here what it would be like if you were to be driving off the beaten path here in your Equinox. Obviously, these tires will be able to handle this totally fine, as would any other usual all-season tire. This isn't anything too challenging, but just to kind of just be an illustration here of the extra capability you're going to get with these tires, and combined with this new off-road mode that you have here for all-wheel drive versions of the Equinox, that allows you to have a little bit more yaw and a little bit more freedom with the amount of slippage you have going on, so that if you are in a loose gravel or dirt kind of situation, it doesn't immediately cut back on your stability control and your traction control. It allows you to have that extra leeway there to wiggle yourself out of something and continue to keep on going there, without having the vehicle think that it's, going off the road or whatever. And so it's great that you have that off-road mode again to go along with these tires. All right, so now I'm briefly driving an LT with the front-wheel drive CVT setup, and just wanted to see, what it's like here with the CVT transmission. We're on some very bumpy little segment of highway here. Now it's smoothing out, and I mean, it's actually pretty normal. I was expecting the CVT to feel a little different, but it's completely fine. They said with this new CVT software they've programmed in, it simulates shifts, and so it's going to feel a little more like a regular automatic than CVTs of the past. And I mean, a lot of companies these days have made more natural feeling CVTs, so I'm glad that Chevy has followed this trend and also gave theirs a more normal feel. And it's smooth at low speeds. I've been doing a lot of stop and go little driving in the suburban and mostly urban areas of Minneapolis here, and it's totally fine in stop and go traffic. And even out here on the highway, we have traffic on our way, but I'll briefly demonstrate an acceleration here in a second of what it's like. But we'll go for a little pass here now. So you can hear there's shift points there. It's not just sitting at red line and feeling artificial or anything. It feels very normal. And so honestly, for the average person, again, or even someone who knows about transmissions and stuff, you're not really going to notice that big of a difference. And I got to say that there's probably a slight smoothness edge here with the CVT, honestly, because you don't have those actual shifts. It's just simulating them, but it smooths it over a little bit more of a comfortable experience. So if you are planning on getting a front-wheel drive one, and you're worried about the CVT or curious about it, it's completely normal, totally fine. I don't think you'll have any real issues here with the driving experience of it. And it, yeah, no complaints to report on. And I mean, yeah, I get a little bit less torque here, 184 pound-feet versus the 203 pound-feet in the all-wheel drive versions. But, you know, outside of that, I mean, I don't really notice a huge difference either. It's still a torquey, turbocharged engine, a lot of punch down low, and should be totally fine in that regard as well. But yeah, the last thing to mention here about the Equinox is the fuel economy and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, these get about the same fuel economy as the prior generation. They're rated at 24 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 26 combined. And that is 1 mpg less actually on the highway compared to the last generation, so it actually went backwards a little bit. They also didn't specify the fuel economy for these versions with the all-terrain tires. I would think that maybe that would drop it down, you know, 1 mpg or something, but as of now, those are just the numbers, and they're same across the board. Now, if you go for front-wheel drive, you will get 2 mpg better in the city, and I believe 1 to 2 mpg better combined. But surprisingly, on the highway, you do 1 mpg worse. It only is 28 mpg for front-wheel drive on the highway. So I'm not sure why. You'd think the CVT would, you know, still be very efficient out on the highway, but those are the numbers. And you know, fuel economy-wise, that is really the one thing where Chevy is a little bit behind some of the others that can manage over 30 mpg on the highway with their, you know, competing vehicles in this segment. And also, you know, it's just notable there is no hybrid option here. That's something that a lot of the competitors not only offer, but, you know, for example, with the CR-V and the sporty versions of the RAV4, you have to get hybrid in order to get the sportier versions. And, you know, that's just something that they're pushing pretty heavily, or even just the higher versions. A fully loaded CR-V is only available in the hybrid versions of those. And so, I mean, if you're someone who doesn't want a hybrid, you don't want that hybridization, you know, Chevy is one of the few these days that still will give you the top trim and, you know, all the sporty stuff without the hybrid component there. But it's just notable, if you are someone who's in the pursuit of better fuel economy, Chevy really can't help you out, unfortunately, unless you want to go to the full extreme of going to an Equinox EV or something and going fully electric. But, you know, in these days of very popular hybrid sales, I mean, hybrids are exploding in their popularity, plug-in hybrids as well. You know, we have nothing. Now, there's been talks that, you know, there will potentially be plug-in hybrids coming for Chevy here in the next couple of years, but in the meantime, it just means that, you know, fuel economy and efficiency is not going to be the Equinox's strong suit. And then the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. That is an area where it does have a very strong case to be made for it. So these start just under $30,000 at $29,995, including destination. And then these ones we're driving here are going to be optioned up. So if you go for the RS or the Activ trims, those ones are going to cost you just over $36,000, again, including destination, which is also pretty notable. I'll get into how that undercuts a lot of the competitors in a minute. But, you know, 36 grand, and then these both have these a couple option packages. So you have this like driver convenience thing, which gives you, again, the 360 camera, gives you the camera rear view mirror. That whole package is about $1,000. We also, it's an extra add-on for the cooled seats and the heated outboard rear seats, and one or two other things that you get, and that adds on a few $100s as well. And then you also have this panoramic roof, which is $1,500. So adding all of those options up, you come out to about $40,420, and that's for a premium paint color. And if you go for some of the other paint colors that are free, you can still get these, you know, just under $40,000. But even there, it is pretty competitive. Now, there are a couple that do undercut this. It's notable that you can get like a Ford Escape ST line for about $36,000 all in, with even you know, a few of the other features that this doesn't have, and those even allow you to option up like a heads-up display, a B&O premium stereo. There is no premium stereo upgrade in this. It seems like they all just have the 6-speaker array, and there's no Bose or anything like you often see on some other Chevy products, which is kind of surprising. But, you know, so with the Escape, you can get those, and even if you go up to one of those ones that has the head-up display, has the stereo, and also has the 2-liter EcoBoost motor, which has 250 horsepower, way more power than this, those are only about $1,000 more expensive. And so, you know, it just comes down to exactly what you want. If this falls into your niche where the equipment you want is at the right price, where it, you know, comes out to be the best value, there is absolutely some cases where this will undercut that. But the Escape, since it is kind of an older vehicle, got a light refresh last year, and does have a bigger screen in the middle. It's a 13.2-inch screen in that. But, you know, aside from that, the Escape isn't particularly exciting these days, but it is just worth noting that that one does undercut this. You could also get a Kia Sportage. They have a variety of versions of that, but if you're on the RS side, you thinking with the sportier look, there's the SX Prestige version of that. Those come all in, even with the cooled seats, 360 camera, all that stuff, for $36,000, coming in several thousand less than this. And even if you go up to the X Pro versions of the Sportage, which do give you the rugged tires and all that, that adds on another $2,000, but that still comes in about $1,000 or so less than one of these, with all the same options and all of that. And you know, the Kia again is another one that has bigger screens. You get double 12.3-inch screens in that. Again, not like people are really counting inches for screens very much, but it's just worth noting, get a little bit more there in those, again, for a slight discount. But aside from those two, everything else is going to be more expensive. In a comparable limited version of the RAV4, for example, without the hybrid component, but just like a fully loaded RAV4, those are like $42,500. So, I mean, we're talking several thousand more than this. Also, if you go up for like even a CRV, things like that are, you know, about $1,000 more expensive. And with the CRV, for example, you don't even get cooled seats. You have a smaller 9-inch screen in that. You have a smaller little regular moonroof in the CRV, because again, the highest you can go without going hybrid is the EXL. And if you go for the hybrid versions of the CRV, again, you're going to be several thousand beyond this. So, you know, whenever you look at the main big sellers in this segment, which are RAV4 and CRV, this does undercut both of those, again, provided you're not interested in the hybrid thing. And so, you know, I think that, again, that's another area where there is a niche here. There's a case to be made for sure where this does undercut those. And it's also worth noting, again, you know, some of these others, like the CRV, doesn't even offer any kind of rugged trim. So the Activ thing, if that's the trim you're after here, you know, Toyota does have like the Tier D off-road version of the RAV4, and you know, you have also, you know, some rugged versions, like I said, with the Kia and others, you know. But even like Hyundai, you know, they offer like their XRT version, which does come in a little less than this, but that doesn't give you as much equipment. And you know, when you go for a fully loaded Tucson, those are also going to be about $1,000 more expensive than this, comparably equipped. So I really think, again, there is a value proposition here to these, and you know, I think that it's a really cool package, again, having great technology as standard. And I think that's really where you're going to have the strongest value proposition, is the standard equipment you get here. And at $30,000 to have all these screens, when some of the others will have smaller screens, less equipment, you know, the fact you get a lot of this stuff as standard, the fact you get all the great safety equipment as standard, I mean, there's a lot here, you know, especially in those lower trims. And I think the LT versions also look really nice, you know, with their chrome front ends, you can get on those and all that. And you know, it's going to be, I'm sure, one of the big volume sellers as well. But overall, I think they did a great job here on the 2025 Equinox, and if it makes sense for you as far as a value standpoint, I think absolutely it's a really nice driving vehicle. Aside from, like I said, the steering still isn't quite as engaging, a little more numb than some of the others, but that's really my only complaint that I can say. Otherwise, it's a really well-behaved, nice to live with little crossover here. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts on the 2025 Equinox. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Chevrolet for providing me here with this opportunity to review the Equinox for you guys. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.